Rohinton, let's make a start with what do you believe were the key takeaways from this G20?
I thought there were three. The headline remains that the US and China for now have arrived at a truce in their self-created trade war. And so we've bought ourselves some time. This is not great news because we shouldn't be here in the first place, but that's the situation we were in, and we've averted some of the worst consequences of it. The second is once again lack of progress and perhaps even regression on the climate change front, in which there's lots of language around leaders pledging to do something, but nothing concrete. And worse, the US is effectively opting out of doing anything in the name of growing the economy and in the name of taxpayers. And the third and perhaps more promising takeaway is on the modern economy, the so-called digital economy, in which I thought there was movement in the right direction on rules of the game around e-commerce, which is the fastest growing segment of global trade. There was movement around the taxation of digital platforms, the multinational companies whose data we all provide and that are taxed differentially and unequally around the world. And also on statements or principles of ethics around the use of artificial intelligence, which is one of those forward-looking issues for which the G20 was in fact created.
Very interesting indeed. We're going to be talking about some of these issues in greater detail in our conversation today. But do you believe that the bilaterals at this G20 became more significant than the G20 itself?
I believe that's the case, and it's not just bilaterals. There's also trilaterals. For example, there's now a meeting between the leaders of India, Japan, and the US. Think about that for a while. That gives you a sense of the new global political power geography, which we're seeing. The Trump-Xi meeting, of course, dominated everything else. And so you're quite right that there's two summits going on. There's the multilateral summit with the 19 or 20 leaders, if you count the EU. And then there's the bilaterals, where the leaders have used the main party to have smaller parties.
Let's delve a little more now where US and China is concerned. The trade war between these two countries. Do you believe the deal now struck is actually a win-win, or is it more of a concession by the US?
Deal might be overstating it. What they've said is they've gone to the abyss, stepped back. This has happened before. There's nothing that prevents this from becoming worse a few weeks or months down the road. On the question of who might have come out ahead, in the short run, it seems to me that China has gained more, particularly if Trump sticks to his pledge to sell more goods to Huawei. That is a good thing. And in fact, tariffs have been averted. So China comes out ahead. But overall, I'd say, because the US was also hurting from this trade war, both sides have gained. And in fact, all of the world has gained.
Okay, let's talk about the larger picture now, Rohinton. We understand that there is this global economic slowdown owing to these several trade tensions amongst nations such as US, China, Canada, India, Turkey. Did you see any major headway on easing the entire situation world over?
No, there's language in the leader's statement at the end about regenerating growth without concrete proposals of how to do it, because we know that the way to regenerate growth is to invest in long-term infrastructure, get over this fixation about bilateral trade, and in fact move to strengthen the multilateral system. And those structural features have not been addressed.
Okay, and I have to ask you this before we let you go. The fact that the G20 next year is going to be held in Saudi Arabia, and that's amidst the controversy of Jamal Khashoggi's killing. Do you think that's going to play a role?
I would go further and say the next 2 years. Next year is Saudi Arabia. The year after that is Italy. Both countries, while they're important and they belong to the G20, they're not the kinds of countries that can move the needle on global affairs. So we might be waiting until 2022 when India is the head of the G20 to see some real oomph in the way the organization behaves, if in fact it is still in some kind of state by then.
All right. This was a great conversation. Rohinton Madura, President of the Center for International Governance Innovation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.